What comes first, the chicken or the egg? What comes first, the food or the poop? And the funny thing is, the toilet paper, gone. Food, you can get as much as you want.
If we were in a circle, dude, can you imagine we would just be spitting Corona at each other nonstop?
Yeah,
like we would
we
just
are
be bathing each other.
quadrupling our chance of spreading Corona right now.
Yeah.
Doll.
Yeah.
You know, he protects us.
I wish I just
Did
had
you bring your
penis.
essential oils?
I've been consuming.
Nothing
my
cures
essential oils.
Corona like a
I've
nice
been putting
a few drops of
cedarwood
lavender
oil on the
on
bottoms
your
of my feet.
I will say that in my local social media networks, I have not seen said endorsement of essential oils, but I think most Utahns are confident that it's out there.
Yeah.
Do they have an aerosol essential oil that's just bleach? Just aerosol
I usually just take a water bottle, fill it with some two
Just
sprays
bleach
to the
straight
face.
into the eyes.
Not bleach, but maybe like a lavender or maybe a
That's
like
not
a-
killing
Bleach.
anything. That's
Or
not
oregano.
killing anything.
I think it is bleach
Oregano
by the
smell
color
like-
of your beard.
I'm sorry for calling you a dumbass. It was.
Oh,
it was
did you
bad
call me a
moment.
dumbass?
Well, you were the one who said.
So
I
now
must
we
be
know
a real
now
dumbass.
we know
You were
who-
looking kind of dumb with your finger
Now we
in
know
your
who
thumb.
Brian was really talking about.
Sorry.
No, I think it's
weren't
well
you the one who
said.
said you
We
could-
were gonna
You didn't want to meet virtually. No.
No, yeah, that was me. I don't want to meet.
and
virtually.
I'll admit to the fact that I personally felt like a drive to be able to meet physically. I just felt like
I know,
it would
it's
make the
'cause you're
difference.
I feel
all
like it's a
lonely.
connection.
It's because you're lonely.
We are well.
With the Corona,
Just one of
you've been the most vocal
I have, yeah.
via social media platforms.
So I do feel a
Cons-
measure of hypocrisy right now, but
well,
But you also feel a measure of
greatness.
greatness, and you have a lot of education on this.
Is this worth killing your 65-year-old neighbor?
Supposedly?
yeah.
Is it?
Oh, sorry, I was pointing to him,
Is
not
it?
you. That's
like,
not going to come off
yes, yes.
I
Yes,
was-
it's worth it.
well. For the record, I was saying yes to Jordan.
I don't remember.
So
what I
why
was saying.
have you been so vocal? What's
Okay,
what's been your thing?
I think at first I was just keeping my distance. I think the social media has kind of worn me out a little bit in the sense that it seems like everybody has their pet political issue, and that whenever any shared national event or concept is kind of out there in the media, they just make some analogous argument for that thing. So before people started getting really serious about it, I think there were tons of people posting, the coronavirus has killed so many people so far, but guess what? This many people died from gun violence.
Oh, yeah.
This many people died from
They
abortion.
had like a list
This
of
many
all
people-
of these things
and-
and reasons why Corona wasn't even a problem.
Right. and so everybody likes to take the trending topic and tie it into their cause, which,
Right.
I mean, maybe isn't the worst thing in the world, but I think it's just a relentless exercise.
And then you
in
look
our
back like a
society
week
today.
later at that same
To
thing you're
be
talking about,
unique.
and now probably the same people are posting about how serious, like, it's so important that we flatten the curve. The same people that were posting this isn't a big deal are now jumping on the same.
Which,
or
I mean,
maybe
but that's
not.
a good thing. If people are going from
Trump
not
being
so
one.
educated to educated, I don't care what the circumstances are, right? I mean, for me personally, just from what I guess, the interpretations that I've created, I guess, from the inputs from other people, I'll just go ahead and go for the start. So what kind of got me engaged with this was...
The fact that Brian had Corona 2 weeks ago. Just kidding.
yeah.
From
It
I was
sounded
in
like
Boston when there was a confirmed case there, and I was in San Francisco and LA all in the last month.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, that's true.
You all knew this? and,
He's been
and
traveling.
you still wanted to meet in person. So.
Yeah,
my fault.
I actually
Not my
didn't
fault.
know this until this moment.
If it
Yeah,
kills,
So I feel
well,
like you
I
were
forgot about it
kills
till this
any
moment.
Of your elderly neighbors,
all gonna
I am not taking any ownership.
But I mean, that in itself is kind of a scary thought because I've had that thought. I've got a grandmother who's in a home right now and not doing well. And we went and visited her a week and a half ago. And already by that time, I was even sending messages to my extended family like, hey, guys, if we go visit grandma, we should probably be careful. So far we've seen that it's, older people have been disproportionately affected by this virus. Right. But it wasn't really until I actually saw that clip from the Joe Rogan podcast with the Dr. Osterholm, who I don't know his credentials, and he's not here, so I hope he doesn't hold me accountable for this. But
He's like,
I mean,
how dare
basically,
you?
it was a 15-minute video about his take on the virus. And I think what struck me more than anything was just the potentials that were involved in the virus. And also the fact that we are even still very much in the beginning stages of this pandemic.
Right,
So there's still a lot that we don't know. But a lot of the preliminary data was saying this is something we should take seriously. The initial projections were something like 10 to 15 times more deadly than influenza.
Right.
Of course, one of the biggest pain points for a lot of people has been the lack of testing worldwide. Or then there are some countries that I guess have done it better. Again, this is more secondhand information that I'm sharing with everybody. I don't have any direct connections to the red phone in the Oval Office. Like I'm not talking to anybody.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that'd be crazy if I didn't know that I was.
One of those that
But
switched.
basically, because our testing is so limited, and even though the countries that have done it well, or at least been able to leverage their infrastructure to get quick testing out, or quickest testing out, we know that there are a lot of people who have contracted the illness who were asymptomatic, or were, it was a cold or a flu and they just kind of passed it off as such.
Right,
So they were never tested, therefore they were never a statistic.
Right, Brian.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Brian.
We're just saying
Oh.
that
But-
was him.
Yeah.
But a cyclist I follow on Instagram, actually, he's been in Europe the last couple of months, and then heard about the ban, came back to the United States, went through 2 hotspots. I don't know if it was Italy or somewhere else, and came back through customs when he landed in the U.S. No stop, no conversation, no anything. He went to 2 different hospitals to see if he could get tested because he wasn't feeling super great. Couldn't find
get
a
tested
hospital to
or
get
didn't know what to
tested
do.
anywhere. So,
Couldn't find a hospital?
well, both hospitals were like, we
full.
can't test.
We don't know how to test for corona,
right.
which I think has been a big problem. But to the same idea you're portraying, my dad flew back from China, from freaking Hong Kong, off of a cruise ship.
No.
I'm not kidding. So
way.
buckle your seatbelts. My dad
And
got off
you've
of a
been
cruise
hanging out with
ship.
your dad today, haven't you?
No, I have not seen my dad today. I avoided him today. But no. I'm talking
How
about
long ago was this?
This was a month ago, right?
Oh,
When
no.
this thing started
Jeez.
really
Oh, no.
rolling. So he gets off of a cruise ship in Hong Kong.
Eats a
That-
bat soup.
Eats a bat soup and
Takes a
heads
few
home.
octopus right down
No,
the throat.
But he gets off the boat. Everyone's wearing masks. He's wearing masks. They were like handing him out on the boat. He gets off, goes straight to the airport, flies home. No questions asked. It's a plane filled with all these people with masks wearing them the entire way.
With recirculated air.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then they just walk off the plane and they're here, right? No problem. But the crazy part is his boat left with a new whole, like, people were getting on it. It was
Business as usual.
It was a Singapore to Hong Kong cruise, and now it was going Hong Kong back to Singapore. People got on. It was one of the ships that was stuck out in the ocean.
Oh, gosh.
My dad's boat, right? He wasn't on it at the time, but that's insane.
And I think because of the lack of testing, we don't realize that it's probably been in Utah or been in other
Oh,
places
yeah,
for a
for a
while.
long time.
My cousin actually shared
Nobody's
with me today that, and she was like, I'm pretty positive that the corona went through my family a month ago.
Yeah.
Because she's like, we had all the symptoms. We went to the doctor, and the doctor said that it was a virus.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a name for it. And I've learned later that a lot of the less threatening cases, they don't have like a
don't get
depth of
reported.
testing
Yeah.
that go into like, well, what kind of virus is this exactly?
Right.
So if they did in fact have coronavirus, then it was just labeled an anomaly.
Yeah,
you know,
how
kind of a
long-
thing.
how
But
long does it
went,
last?
it went through the family, and then it was
Same
kind of
as
done.
like influenza.
I
Because there's
think
2 weeks.
2
But like,
weeks.
how long is the
It's
pain?
probably
a little
really-
bit longer?
It's probably really like a week strong, and then
Yeah, I was gonna ask
like
how
I
strong.
still am coughing up phlegm from
Right.
like 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Because my
So-
my roommates both had something crazy, and their whole family got it, and it was like 48 hours
Right.
of like death that they've never felt before, which makes sense because
Can I-
they've never
can I throw
died.
out a-
But my dad got
But I
home,
had the same thing,
and Pearson,
and it was weird.
my brother, dude, like 3 days, I think 2 or 3 days after, was home from work for a week.
Sick?
Yeah, with influenza. And he went to the
Oh.
doctor, didn't know necessarily what it was. The doctor was just like, yeah, you've got influenza. So,
Sounds like you got a boo boo.
yeah, and that was it. And
Can I throw out
went
a
home.
hypothetical?
Yeah.
So I feel like travel right now is off limits to everybody who's sensible. Okay.
Which is funny because
Dude, I have a freaking
here's
flight
a
to
hypothetical
Seattle.
for you
That's-
though. Here's a hypothetical, right?
not a joke.
So let's say, so like all-inclusive flight resort deals to like Cancun are like $550. If you buy them
Yes.
now for like 2 months from now, is it worth gambling?
Yes.
To hope that
That
Yes.
everything
flying
That it's under
home
control.
down- flying is now back
Yeah,
on
yeah.
here in 2 months.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I'm
you could.
saying yeah.
Assuming,
could-
assuming that airline is still in business.
That's another important concept too, because you could say the same thing for the stock market. I've seen
Right.
a fair amount of posts from people saying, "So is this one of those good times to hop in?" You know, because people still subscribe to the whole buy low, sell high mentality when it comes to the market, right?
You
Get rich on the down.
Yeah, they're like go now, you know, and
You buy into fear.
yeah, or you leverage it.
If you
know,
do the
from a
exact
business
opposite of
perspective.
what most people are doing, you're probably going to be successful.
Yes.
I think there's actually an index for fear, isn't it? Like the VIX or something. The fear index,
But
perhaps.
it's all about buying into fear, baby. Get that cash out.
Cancun in May.
Which is a segue into some of the responses that we've seen with outside in the social media world, which is there's one post in particular that I've seen that I would like to kind of maybe dive into and break up. But I'd have to look it up. But, you know, there has been the obvious and vocal responses that started with a lot of levity of like, no big deal. This is
we can
nothing.
laugh
And
about
then
this.
people are saying like, you know, I made it
Not
through
in
the
China.
housing crisis in 08 and H1N1 in 09 and they're just like, we don't have to change anything. But like I said, when I first saw that video, it talked about how it's resistant to a lot of antiviral treatments. It is absolutely. Apparently, we have no specific treatment for it other than, I guess, just like keeping everything else going as strong as it can be so that your body can fight back as well as it can. So, I mean, that alone makes it unique in that we really can't control it once we know somebody has it. So in that way, it kind of renders testing important, but I think that's why there's been such a massive focus about social distancing.
Yeah.
Because to your points, people could have we might already have the outbreak coming on. Like I think it's kind of depressing because today I saw a post from CNN saying like it's crept up to 3,000 and they say it's rising. It's like, yeah, it's going to happen. We're going to get massive widespread, you know, people having this. So
imagine someone who lives in in Manhattan right now. How would you feel?
I mean, I think anybody who's in like whose risk factors are higher, I would be scared. I mean, I have a great aunt, and she made a comment on one of the posts that I'd shared, and she's like, I just turned 70, I'm lying low, and she's like, I just want to have a chance. You know, that's the kind of talk like you don't know, and we still don't really know a whole lot about it. There are a lot of signs that are turning positive in the sense that as more and more testing is happening, we're seeing the fatality rate go down.
Right.
And people have kind of changed their estimates from like 10 to 15 times more deadly to around 6%.
6%. I heard.
Wait, hold on.
I mean, 0.6%.
Yeah. So I think
Or
the
6
best
times
case
more than the
scenario
flu.
of testing so far, I think, is South Korea, where they had essentially drive-through testing.
But we still don't know, and we're just trying to fill in the blanks in it. And I hope that, as it becomes more apparent, the people that have had it, that the fatality rate will become less significant. But I even had a thought, I guess, where I was thinking about, if it ends up like 5 months from now or 7 months from now when we go back into colder weather, when they say it will probably be a stronger outbreak or whatever, but we have, antiviral stuff to just address right away.
Right.
If we are capable of rendering it somewhat less dramatic than the flu season and whatnot, I mean, that'll be awesome. I really hope that's the case. But what I've personally kind of learned from this is I have had zero cares about flu season whatsoever.
Yeah, ever.
And
like
it
in
took,
your entire
for
life,
me
right?
personally, COVID-19 to think
Flu season's
more
dangerous.
communally.
Yeah,
that I'm like,
yeah.
I could kill somebody if I am irresponsible.
Yeah.
And I had an example of a grandmother who was, not in good health.
Have
and
you
if
ever
she
had
had
the
it,
flu
I'd
shot?
be really scared.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hit or miss with a flu shot.
Yeah.
If like I have,
I'm
I happen
gonna
to see the
claim
sign for a free
irresponsibility. I've never
vaccine, I
had
walk in.
Well, me
I've
too.
never had it.
Well, I've had it before, but like
That sucks.
doing it,
Yeah, okay.
I haven't done it a ton. So I will say, like, that's what it's been for me too. Because initially there was like this. For me, it was just maybe I'll wait for you to sit back down. No, you're good. For me, it was I was poking fun of it initially. Like, this isn't a big deal. If I get it, it does. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to affect. And then all of a sudden my brain started to shift when I'm like, my grandparents are in their 80s. Both aren't going to be able to handle something like this well. You know what I mean? And it definitely shifted me outward in terms of like my social behavior, which is kind of sad that it took a major pandemic for me to actually think about others. You know, like that's a sad thing. So like, can I like do a high level thing here? I looked this up. This was from University of California, March 10th. So 5 days ago? It's the San Francisco BioHub panel, and there was 5 different like specialists that specialize in infectious disease and outbreak response and all of that stuff. And these were they had 6 bullet points here. And this was some of their top takeaways. So one was, at this point, we're past containment. Containment is basically futile. So containment efforts won't reduce the number of people who actually get this in the United States. Now it's more about care. So past containment, it's about care. The whole idea is flatten the curve, right? So we limit sitting in a box with 4 grown males.
I was against this, everyone.
I know.
Everyone.
I know. So their next point, I found these so interesting. How many in the community already have it? Nobody really knows. But they said essentially 40 to 70% of Americans will eventually get this in the next 12 to 18 months.
It's crazy.
Is that a crazy stat to you guys? How do you guys feel about that? Do you
I
hear
have a
any
question
opposing
about it.
The
information?
scariest extrapolation I have for that is,
Yeah.
let's say it is the 70%, then that's pretty much like I think somewhere around 200 million people. Even if the fatality rate was, just the 0.6 that people are thinking that it is.
In fact, I have that right here. This is
Can we look up?
that would be an anticipation of 12
12
million deaths.
Yep.
No.
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 6% of
No, no.
200 million?
No, but that's 6% more deadly
No,
than the
0.0
regular flu.
Times
0.06. 12 million.
So here's what they said.
Check
Let me
Check
read
it.
off what they said before we go into that, because I feel like that number's too high and we're calculating it
Right?
wrong.
That's what I'm thinking.
So this is
I
what
don't-
they said. With their guesstimated numbers, they indicate that about 1.5 million Americans may die, right? So this compares to the seasonal flu's average of about 50K that die from the regular flu.
Yeah.
So
And we're already at 35
What'd
or
they say?
something like a week ago. It was 35,000.
So assume 50% of the U.S. population. This is what they assumed. 50% of the U.S. population.
0.06 is 6%.
Oh, right. And not
Yeah.
0.6%. You're right. That's what it was.
So
Still
they assume 50% of the U.S. population gets
Still
it. That's
million.
160 million people infected. And that means with a 1% mortality rate, that's 1.6 million Americans that could possibly die from this over the next 12 to 18 months.
Can I be super selfish?
Yeah.
And say and hypothesize here.
Is this a new thing?
if we
being
can weed
super
out
selfish?
the American population by 1.2 to 1.6 million people,
How dare you?
is real estate costs?
That's
gonna
where
go
you're going
down?
with this?
I don't know.
Because you know what's important to me.
I don't even know
Buy
what
a
to
bigger
say.
house to impress people I don't even care about.
Wow.
Who was it that says
too
like this
selfish?
planet needs a new plague or something? I think that's from a TV show. Somebody was just like, we need a new plague.
Dwight Schrute? No, Nathan.
Looks
yeah,
like
that's-
Siri has been
Nathan.
listening this whole time. And what you just said was sent to the United
Okay,
States.
so I have a question.
Apple.
Is it painful for those that get it? How many people experience this kind of devastating either death or sickness? Like what are there people that have gotten the coronavirus that are like, yeah, it feels like a cold, and then they're done with it?
They did show.
Is that a thing?
So there were some statistics around the propensity of certain what are they called? Symptoms. The most dangerous and the most unique one that is hospitalizing the most people is shortness of breath. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was around 20%. It was either 50% or 20% that experienced shortness of breath. So in terms of like fever, I think it was 80%. Runny nose and just kind of general cough, I think those were like 80%. Shortness of breath, I think it was 50%. or 20. Man, I can't remember. And that's the most dangerous one, and that's why people are going to the hospitals to use respirators.
Right. And then they say that depending on the severity of their experience with it, then we hear about some people who have said that, like, I think some people maybe have made the claim that coronavirus leaves you with scarring regardless, but there was
On the inside?
yes,
Emotional scarring.
internal pulmonary scarring, I think. But anyways, apparently that was more if they were on a respirator. So depending on how much intervention needed to happen, that obviously kind of correlates to how much damage is being done after the
Good
fact.
thing my respiratory system is immaculate.
So the death rate varies hugely by age. Over the age of 80.
Oxygen.
Over the age of 80, the mortality rate could be between 10 and 15%. So obviously, all of our grandparents land in a category that could be pretty dangerous. And then
Now I feel
said they
bad
don't
for
know
visiting my
whether
grandpa
My
yesterday.
grandparents are all dead.
sorry,
You.
I
Yeah.
apologize, Bry guy.
I'm kidding.
Big thighs.
I do have my grandpa is about to go into a home, and he freaked out yesterday. He's like, "I'm not going in there. Don't make me do it." Because I mean, he heard about
I
the
empathize.
corona. So I think
my grandpa's the
the
same
rest
right
home
now.
in Washington State had 63 confirmed cases and 23 deaths.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 days ago, like 1 out of every 4 deaths in the U.S.
If
was
somebody gets it in the
one
group home
rest
or
home.
the assisted living home, they're all dead.
Yeah, Jill's grandma
They're all
lives in an assisted living home that's like down the street from us, and we can't visit. Like they've shut it down.
Same.
Can't
crazy.
visit,
I went and
can't do
visited
any of
my
that.
grandpa in assisted living yesterday.
You're selfish.
And I decided, hey,
Moron.
grandpa, and we just like gave each
You
other
kissed him
high
on the
fives.
cheek.
I kissed him on the cheek. I actually
Like-
opened his
like
door
Tom
so he
Brady?
could
We have this
pee.
really
tradition in our
watched
family to
all
open our
these-
mouths and breathe into each other's mouths as a symbol of our love and our life-giving affection.
Ferris Bueller. So that's how it
pretty
is in their
standard.
family.
No, that's Ace Ventura. You spit a loogie in their face. You haven't seen that?
I have, but
seen
I don't think is that called the Wild?
Let me show you my affection.
Dude, I
You
never
haven't seen
realized
that is
you do a good Jim Carrey.
Oh,
like
that's
you're like a blonde
a
Jim Carrey.
blonde Jim. All right. So the next thing.
Don't take offense
so
to that,
COVID it could be seasonal, right? But
Season
it-
after
It's not,
season.
It's not. So
okay.
So
you'd have more info
MERS,
on that,
right?
Yeah.
So there's the common cold, like 1 out of 4 cases of the common cold is in the coronavirus family, right? So SARS, which is short for, I think the South Asian respiratory syndrome, and then MERS, the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome. So MERS. So there's a couple of kind of
MERS was really tough on.
well,
wasn't it?
so there's a
pretty horrible
common
disease?
thought that, oh, hey, this summer warm weather is going to come around and it's going to slow it down. Guess what? MERS spread on the Arabian Peninsula in 110 degrees, and it did just fine. So the idea that the summer is going to slow it down is
Yeah.
not
No,
going
that's
to happen.
It was
With-
that in the same family of because the corona
Yes,
is
it's
a
corona,
family.
yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I've heard that like the guy on Rogan said that high heat or high or low temperatures don't do anything. You have to get like to 600 degrees for it to.
I think we still
Kill.
just don't know exactly. I think that what Brian says is totally fair, right? I mean, because it's very possible that it could be the same type of coronavirus that's resistant to extreme temperatures, but it might not. They're saying that apparently it has a very. This is from the Sam Harris podcast, actually.
yep.
The
first or
podcast
the
he did on
second
the
episode?
second one, the
Okay.
follow up with
Haven't gotten all
the
way
guy
through
from
that one
John
yet.
Hopkins.
Nice.
Anyways, apparently it's like got a lipid exterior that makes it a little bit more vulnerable, but that again they
To
don't know.
hand sanitizer. And
Right,
stuff.
yeah. And they said that because Sam Harris asked the question, how long does it last if it gets put on an object?
I think it said 9 days, right?
They said 9 days, but he said
if, up to 9 days, which is dependent on. So temperature doesn't necessarily kill it, but if it's 110 degrees, it could last on a doorknob for 3 days rather than 9 days.
No,
but
and
it
he
still is not going to die.
he
immediately.
qualified that limit by saying that like it depends on the type of substance it's on.
Humidity.
Like somebody, I think in that same one he said if it was like copper, apparently that's
Yeah.
really bad for viruses or something. So it. Again, that's the hard thing to kind of nail
That's why
down
you
is we
wear
say,
copper underwear.
if you cough or if you sneeze, that's like we believe that's the number one way that it's getting transmitted. But then Dr. Olberholm in the preliminary data said that when they were swabbing some people who just had it and were showing limited to no symptoms, like he said that it could be possible that it could be transmitted just by people breathing around.
Respiratory.
But that it's not an airborne one where it can like just remain in the air after you breathe it out. Apparently, it sinks down. It is influenced by gravity, and that's why they came up with like the 6-foot radius thing.
So
But
is
again,
that confirmed that it's
by
no longer just
gravity.
respiratory? That it's,
I don't know.
That was
That guy.
Yeah, he was saying it was.
But that was 5 days ago.
Yeah.
And the Oberholm guy made some comments in his interview with Joe Rogan that somebody on LinkedIn who looked at one of my posts said he's directly contradicting something that the CDC said. This was an interesting interaction, by the way. So I was like, oh, what's the contradiction? And he said, I'm not going to add to, people speaking on social media, but you should check out the CDC website. And I'm like, okay.
Can you tell me which?
So I went to the CDC
link?
website, and I'm like, I'm not seeing, and I sent him a link back, and I was like, hey, I found this link. I didn't find any contradictions. Like, do you want to help me out and tell me what contradictions you were thinking of?
No, it's your job.
And he
to
sent
find it.
back a direct link to another page on the CDC, no comment. And I'm like, dude, like, I want to hear what you
your
apparently have
position here.
seen. Like,
Yeah.
I want, if I'm wrong or if I need to update my perception of this virus, like, I want to know. So I think there is a difference between, I guess, unsolicited, just panic posting where, you're just, I don't know, maybe that's not as effective and maybe that's this guy's approach. But I'm still actually kind of frustrated that I've directly asked him twice, not in a provocative way. I hope it hasn't come off that way. I want to know.
Right.
But I don't know.
No response.
So that's been another dynamic, I guess.
What do you think of like the cultural response to like? I mean, there's a billion memes, right, that are
For
like
sure.
floating around. There's actually some pretty funny ones I read, like you can rob a bank with a booger these days, or like what I mean, like stuff like that. But
My wife actually won $10 from a contest for the best coronavirus meme.
For
That's
the
awesome.
best coronavirus.
For the best coronavirus
toilet
joke.
paper. Tell us what it is.
So the post or the meme goes as follows: the neighbor kid has just now realized that the poop they've been picking up in the backyard isn't from a dog that we own. Or no. I ruined it. Sorry. It's basically the neighbor kid is now realizing that let me try it again. Take 3. The neighbor kid
Editing.
picking up poop in our backyard has just now realized that we don't own a dog. Hashtag no TP. Which I don't think, just pooping in the backyard is going to
Right.
resolve the lack of TP
Yeah.
issue, but still
I was like, why wouldn't you still poop in the toilet?
absurdly funny.
Still good.
So she won.
That's awesome. Well done.
You can go in the pool.
But so the social response, right? I went into a Walmart yesterday for some reason just to like see the chaos. But I mean, just empty shelves,
Yeah,
right?
it's crazy.
And it's the most bizarre stuff that's gone. I mean, like if TP's gone, right?
How is that the thing?
Like there is.
Yeah,
We-
why
like,
are people
why
so
is that
concerned
a
about their
thing?
buttholes? Like there is so many
It shows
banana
how
leaves.
much we care.
Oh my
We're like
Remember
the most
Jumanji?
important thing to me is
Yeah.
cleanliness in the bum.
But if
hole.
you're not
I-
eating, then you're probably not excreting.
I don't know. Yeah,
Excreting.
it's some. They say the non-perishables are the things that are going. What's funny is not only what's been taken, but what's particularly funny is what hasn't been taken. So my cousin made a post the other day,
Deodorant.
and it was a picture
Found
of
plenty.
cans and cans and cans of Spam, with the caption, "They'd rather die."
It's so true though.
And I've seen other similar like pictures and posts of it's like I guess canned corn. Some people have
Oh yeah.
they dislike some things, and it's just like, all right, well,
yeah.
We've got a chest freezer and the normal freezer with our fridge, and it's stocked full of food right now. We're trying to only eat. Yeah, we're essentially trying to get through all the fresh food. I mean, fresh fruit like bananas, fruit, and vegetables, like they're designed to just come in all the time, regularly. The challenge I think is going to be like, how do you get there in front of the other 50,000 people at a given Walmart? But stuff like toilet paper, that's I mean that could take months to restock
right.
the inventory.
And the question I have is, are we doing it as a culture to be able to possibly bless the lives of our neighbors with TP, or are we doing it as a culture to hoard things for myself?
I feel like it's more the latter. I think that's been the theme throughout the country.
Right,
Is
right.
that
which is a sad theme that
Yeah.
like this is the first global pandemic we've had, and the only thing that I see is people hoarding things for themselves out of fear and almost greed. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
And granted, I would do anything for my kids and family
Sure.
at a given point, and I think anybody would. But how do you balance that with the fact that we are a human family
Yeah.
Yep.
and should be trying to take care of one another rather than having, you know, a stockpile of like a garage full of toilet paper? Like some of these pictures I've seen, I'm like, but why?
Yeah.
Like,
So I mean,
but why?
I can tell you, our firsthand experience, right? My
You ran out of TP at a cabin or something like that?
Firsthand.
We had weeks, probably over a month worth, and my wife goes and she buys the limit at Smith's or whatever grocery store, so she gets 5 big things, and then within 2 days she had given all of it out to neighbors who were
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's cool.
I need
And
TP.
I posted
awesome.
about it on Instagram, and your wife mentioned. I don't know if you saw my text. You certainly didn't respond to it.
I never
jerk.
respond to your texts.
But your wife responds, and she's like something like, "We're out of toilet paper."
Right.
And so I text you, and I'm like, "Hey, are you out? Like, do you need some help, man?"
Dude, we're
Dude,
using
here's-
tablecloths.
Here's something that I feel I somehow have been richly blessed because of my experience
With
on
bidet.
my mission.
I was gonna
Because,
say bidet.
folks,
bidet
If anybody listens to this ever,
orders are going way up.
bidet all the way.
Yeah, bidet,
You
baby.
don't. I'm gonna say it. I've
I
said it
ca- I-
100 times. I'm gonna say it again.
Can't do it, man.
You do not know clean until
use a
you've used a
bidet.
bidet.
I agree with that.
Unless-
I've used a bidet.
unless you
I
use
used a
wet
bidet,
wipes.
and I was like, why did we go
Wet
a
wipes are
different
great.
direction? Like, why doesn't every
Because it's
Household
sexual-
have a
it's
bidet.
sexual.
And the crazy thing
Sexual.
about it
That's
is
why.
you can get
Really?
a bidet attachment that you could spend 30 minutes installing it in your house.
Mm-hmm.
It'll cost you $25-$30. That's how many rolls
right?
to pay for it.
Right.
Like within a month.
And I feel like bidet marketing would be very easily, like so easy to come up with a little like, get your bidet today. You know what I mean? Like, there's a million ways
Spray
to
I do.
rhyme
bidet.
that.
I do think
Like,
that there
why
is
are they
a
not marketing
there
it?
is a cultural resistance to bidets, and I'll be honest,
Oh,
the
I
very
guarantee on
first
Amazon
time I
the
tried a bidet
bidets
was
are
on my
going.
mission, and I thought I was doing something wrong.
You're like,
I
I gotta
was
talk to the
like,
mission
I was like,
president.
oh shoot, I feel like this is wrong, but I don't know what happened.
felt so gay
Maybe
in
I
my
just
life.
was in
less,
that moment.
less stimulating
it-
over time.
I don't know. The United States is built on Puritan principles, and anything to do with genitalia,
Puritan principles.
anything to do with genitalia is like, I feel like
So-
I'm doing something
Calvin-
wrong.
So what
I
you're
don't know
saying,
about
what you're saying
Hobbesian.
is, I would rather take my own fingers with toilet paper and rub that area.
It's a terrible
versus,
system.
why he
versus
said
just spraying it with
terrible.
something else.
Oh,
It's
dude!
so
Like,
slow.
here's the thing. This is the
When
wild
did
thing.
toilet
You
paper
have
come?
you have a
It was like-
towel that
I
you
have no
use
idea.
in the case of a bidet.
Early 1900s.
And the crazy
maybe
thing
even
is, you
later.
use a bidet effectively. You wipe. There's nothing on there, man. Nothing on there.
Is it
Well,
it
how
like a
hard you
one-use
blasting that
towel?
water?
Are you,
Dude,
is it
I'm getting
one
the job
towel
done.
Per use? Is it one towel per use?
No, it can
Or
be
is it like one
extended,
of those
but I
rolling
mean, don't
ones
quote
that
me on
comes
that. Maybe
back
I'm not the
through?
best user, but honestly, like, there is nothing on there.
I agree. I feel like
I have-
bidets should
I
be
have-
a household
I'll
item.
We have
still
witness.
use-
Hey, honey, could you just snap a photo?
Yeah.
please?
No,
How do you know?
I'll still use, some insurance toilet paper when I'm using the bidet at times, just to make
Well,
sure I got it all.
Well, once
And
you use a
I'm
bidet,
telling you, like,
probably wanna get the wet
I'll get the
off.
wipe going. There isn't a single change in coloration. Like,
Wow.
It's clean. You put it
It's-
back on the roll.
Yeah.
gently
For the next
used.
user.
Lightly
Use and
used.
reuse. They say recycle.
So yeah, before everybody gets grossed out by me, let's move on. Another topic.
No, I just feel like, if anything, we should be following the example of your sweet wife, which is, aw, poor guy fell over. Which is, dude, we're the human family, right? So if you are one of those that has been lucky enough to
Yeah.
get things from the grocery store that are needed by others, like,
Yeah.
I feel like a little give and
But
take. there
again,
and
the weird thing
sacrifice.
is, why toilet paper?
yeah.
Like, people feel
I
like
still
when,
don't
like, I mean,
understand.
honestly, when you told that story, I was like, how sweet,
Mhm.
how good. But then I thought, toilet paper though?
Yeah.
I know,
You know, like
it's
if-
so odd.
but I mean,
so
It's odd.
Take it for what it is. It's a great thing, and clearly it's a hot commodity, and she was willing to sacrifice it. So there we go. But I mean, what are the other
feel
things
like
that you actually think should be picked up and
What
bought?
comes first, the chicken or the egg? What comes first, the food or the poop? And the funny thing is, the toilet paper, gone. Food, you can get as much as you want. Maybe like doesn't matter. Canned food is there. It's all good.
Yeah. No,
I'm
I
curious.
bet it's because it was such a weird thing. People were joking about it on social media that
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like, seriously, we do need toilet paper, and we're
Yeah.
running low.
Yeah.
And then
Maybe.
There's a billion toilet paper
Almost.
memes that are pretty money.
So what
Charmin bears
with
be like,
with the so with the kind of uncertain times and the hoarding mentality that there is today, like I get it, right? We're a human family and we need to make sure everybody is taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
But how many days or weeks worth of food do you feel like you're comfortable with at this moment? For me, it's a month. Like anything over a month, I consider like
Too much.
hoarding a little bit. Like there's probably other people who need it more than me.
Mm.
But anything less than that, it's like don't get me wrong. The neighborhood deer path, there's literally like 60, 100 deer that pass through my yard every single day. So my food supply could be years long. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
If
necessary.
If they're
everything
too
at the
dumb
grocery-
to
if the-
not make
if the
adjustments,
grocery
buy a
supply
giant
chain
freezer in venison
fell.
for the next 25 years.
Totally. But
So,
I'm curious, how many weeks or days?
How? But here's the thought to add to that. If over the next 12 to 18 months, this pandemic is worse than we could have predicted, right? How does a month even work for food? You know what I mean? At some point, TP's out, but we need to start buying all the canned food and all the, you know what I mean? Like, when is it? At what point are our shelves so empty in grocery stores over a 12 to 18 month time period that it becomes a little bit
Honestly,
hairy?
at that point, I think it would get so dire that I think, honestly, the government would probably take control a little bit, start rationing the food
Right.
like
and
that way.
dishing it out a little bit.
And maybe, honestly, like guarding it. I don't know if that is something that even constitutionally can happen, but I mean, 12 to 18 months of a maybe worst case scenario. And that raises kind of another huge point of this whole experience for me, which is I feel like we're extremely fortunate that this isn't the avian flu or it isn't a real
Right.
new plague.
Right.
If it was, we probably wouldn't be here.
So
We wouldn't be talking about it. There would be zero humorous chatter. It would just everybody would be in actual panic, and there would probably be far worse violence and attacks on people than we can even imagine. And I think one of the common themes that I've seen from people who know a lot more than me in political leadership or health leadership, all those entities that we have worldwide, the message is, we've had a couple chances to receive warnings, like the 2003 outbreak of SARS, 2009 with H1N1.
Right.
And there have been people who have said, like, our national and global infrastructure cannot handle a real pandemic. We don't really have an effective plan. And again, a lot of the really scary but compelling things that Dr. Osterholm brought up in the podcast with Joe Rogan was, he's like, it will have a ripple effect that could be absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
And he gave the example of most life-saving drugs in hospitals are generics that are manufactured in China. So what happens when that supply chain shuts down? We don't have, he basically indicating that, obviously if we had to amass our resources here in the States, we could do it. But again, we'd have to start from scratch. We don't have something to respond right away. And we would lose people who were having a heart attack or a stroke. And we would lose people who did not have that virus or that issue. And we'd lose them because the infrastructure isn't built to take it. And I think that's another reason why the flatten the curve concept has become so huge is for now, we're fortunate enough to have recommendations where apparently in China, it's like at gunpoint. They are like, you can't go anywhere. And apparently they even, again, I'm really just kind of quoting the Sam Harris podcast, but apparently they were restricting free speech with what the doctors could say as well. And, that's something that people are criticizing China for doing. But at the same time, like, you kind of can't deny its efficacy. And you wonder if things got really bad, if we would start to loosen our commitment to these morals, which again, that's a real possibility, and I think most people are, hoping that never happens. That we get in a situation where, we're like the Galactic Senate, and Sheev Palpatine from Naboo,
Oh, man,
is
we moved
granted
into a whole new
emergency
realm.
powers that change the course of an entire galaxy far, far away. I mean, I think that we've had that exposure that we're afraid of that happening.
Right.
And that was one of the posts specifically that I wanted to talk about. And I think it'd be kind of funny or fun to dive into it.
So when
you want to.
Find it right now. The
Yeah,
best toilet paper meme I saw was freaking Indiana Jones holding the bag of sand, and there was a toilet paper in the place of the golden head that he was trying to swap. Dude, I don't know why that one got me so hard in the funny bone, but he's just like, ready to swap out for some TP. Oh, dang it.
Whatever it takes.
All right, hit us with this post.
And I would be really interested to see everybody's takes on it because, again, I think it would just be interesting. But it says, and just like that, the government controls all sporting events, concerts, jobs, colleges, medical facilities, whether or not you can leave your house, has depleted resources such as toilet paper and food, controls all travel, and you guys wonder why they develop and use viruses to scare the public. They now control you and everything about your life. See how easy it was? Mass panic, hysteria, complete control of literally the world over a virus. One that the survival rates are even extremely high. All freedom has been limited overnight. See how easy that was?
Who wrote that?
Who posted that?
Glenn Beck?
Alex Jones?
I have no idea.
gonna say
It's
Glenn Beck or-
people are posting basically this. It looks like somebody wrote it in notes on an iPhone,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
and then they just kind of
reposted it.
filtering it around. But I mean, thoughts?
My
Interesting.
life hasn't changed one bit.
Yeah, you've still been
I-
traveling like
I-
crazy,
I
apparently.
work from home 3 days a week, and now I'm gonna work from home 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And now you're
I
going to
still
eat more
go on
venison than you've
long
ever eaten in your
bike
life.
rides.
At the office, and I still have to go to the office.
Yeah.
There's no change.
And-
Other than the funny
I-
hand washing story that I had.
I don't know. Ooh, yeah, I'm scared now. My government.
Yeah.
My
I mean,
government
I'm
trying to
power.
prevent-
I'm not one.
It's
Whatever.
the nano dust they're
Whatever.
dropping from airplanes, and they're seeing our entire medical makeup.
I am definitely somebody who can at times,
Right.
put on the tinfoil hat, right? And
Dude,
you,
it's fun.
and
though.
you
It's
certainly
kinda,
think
it's like something's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know, seriously, this whole
UFOs.
thing has been that way for
And
me. It's like, are we
of
like...
course people can conceive that it could be some geopolitically motivated, genetically engineered virus that we're blaming on China, whatever.
Right.
I mean, but it's again the specific reasoning that post gives is something that kind of makes me laugh a little bit. Because they say, and again, we're just picking out some random post, or I'm wanting to,
Right.
because I don't like the argument.
Yeah.
And even if it was true, I just don't see how that would be exactly what was in the mind of that
Like,
force.
I hate the NBA.
Like specifically,
down.
specifically sporting events. I think that most of the leagues and these organizations that are doing these shutdowns and these postponements or cancellations, I don't think it's. I don't know, but I don't think it's necessarily from government pressure as much as it is social pressure.
No.
Can you imagine if you're the league that was last to close your doors,
Right.
and then later on people say you put your league and your people at risk, like
Right. All of your
you're not
fans
a
and-
champion.
yeah.
That would really hurt your branding a lot. So I think for a lot of reasons, people are making very conservative decisions at all levels.
My marathon just got canceled. It had nothing to do with. It had nothing to do with like, some government official showing up. I know, dude. I ran 315 miles preparing for this thing in the past 4 months.
Kidding?
Kidding me?
It's so
weird.
unfortunate.
As long as you stay 6 feet ahead of everybody.
Yeah,
you're
it's like
behind.
which I will be.
That would be an
Which
interesting
will totally
dynamic.
be
That
120 yards
all
above it.
runners are conscientious
As you
of the
can
6
tell,
feet.
Spencer's
They,
from
maybe
Kenya.
they get like assigned plastic halos around their waist, and they're all running around like bumping against each other, and then like
Big old hula hoop type
Barking.
things.
that'd be kind of funny.
But
But
I had
yeah.
a question about the sports though, and I don't want to deviate from the subject completely, but I have kind of a theory about sports regarding violence that I think sports deters the world as it is from violence as it used to be. So
Because football is simulated war.
well, a lot of it's simulated war. A lot of it appeals to our tribalistic kind of tendencies to
agree.
be on a team one way or another. And I feel like if sports are not a thing, people will start turning a little bit toward some sort of an outlet for their aggression.
Some kind of like Aztec.
Yeah.
Like if you you hit it with your hip,
The
and then if you
armadillo.
lose, you get sacrificed.
Right, to the
Like
sun god.
I don't know if any of that is historically accurate, but it sounded cool.
But yeah, that's a thing. I don't know how long it would take to do that one way or another, but I do know that there's a lot of aggressive dudes with some pent up.
People do have
energy.
a desire to be entertained.
And that.
Panem and circenses, is that the quote for like the Roman strategy?
Are you not entertained?
Well, no, it was like I think it's and they brought it up again in Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Panem.
I was
like
gonna say
the name of the
Panem,
country
yeah.
is like a nod to the concept of Panem and circenses. I'm probably misspeaking that, but it's like what's it called? It's called bread and circuses. Like
You know
give
more
the
about it
people
than
what
I
they
do.
want. It's just give them food and entertainment, and it will quiet and quell political rebellion. Give them food and
Interesting.
entertainment. Food and entertainment.
Interesting.
And again, so
Well, that was
interestingly
in- that was
enough,
in
Oh,
Gladiator,
dude.
yeah,
interestingly enough, that's
just
being
appealing
taken
to the
away,
masses.
right?
Yeah.
Like, and again, people have also tried to say, and again, I don't know for sure. I don't have a crystal ball, but again, politically speaking, people put their spin on it, right?
Right.
They're like, oh man, our lack of testing is the biggest mismanagement in this whole process, and it's Trump's fault. And I don't know all of the red tape that has been referred to.
tests. I will not test.
This is just a common cold.
He was tested though, right?
Yeah,
tested
he
negative.
did.
And I remember during the emergency, the declaration of the state of emergency, people were in my office while we were watching it. They're like, "He sounds sick,"
Yeah,
and that would have
he
just
did.
been the craziest thing.
Just the craziest turn
And
of
he
events
is
ever.
in the high risk category, right?
Right.
Oh, very
Right,
high risk
overweight.
category.
All of
over
our
70.
presidential
And-
candidates are in the
And
high risk
fake hair.
categories.
Yeah,
Sanders will never die.
all of
let's be
the
honest.
all of the late night hosts essentially talked about how crappy Trump did, right? Because he essentially lied so many times during this whole process that health insurance companies were going to waive all costs for treating, and they're going to waive the cost for the test, not any of the treatment, right? He went to the CDC and was saying how these doctors are just like blown away by how much I just get this.
I really
right?
get it.
And,
I really
and
do.
On Twitter, on Twitter, he criticized Chuck Schumer for saying Schumer thinks I need more than $2.5 billion in kind of a treatment package. And then, a couple weeks later, he's like, and I'm approving $8 billion for this. Like, how many times? And then in 2018, I didn't know this. So in 2018, he cut a big portion of the budget for the
Pandemic response team.
pandemic response team.
Oh man.
He has fumbled at every single
But
turn.
here's my take
Yeah,
on that
that is a
too.
bummer.
And here's my take on that though is like say what you will about our handling of the issue specifically. I think globally it's understood that nobody was ready for this. And it's
Oh,
not
yeah,
so
yeah.
much an issue. And again,
It-
a lot of the criticism is circulating around the testing, which is probably a fair point. But the thing is, again, even with testing, that's not treatment. It's
Sure.
not.
I mean,
and
so with Trump, it's not about making it go away, or it's about disseminating false information.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, like
That is
making
Yeah.
sure
very-
that what you're saying is accurate.
We've done, we've done wonderful things here, and that's why the case
Dude,
is
there was
down
there
here in
was
the United
there was
States.
one part that made me laugh really hard during and that's I mean maybe not the best thing to do when somebody's declaring a state of emergency. He's like, I'm declaring a state of national emergency, and he's like, two very big words.
It's like, no, we all understand.
I remember thinking like,
Big
sure,
emergency. Yeah.
But
These words are
um,
going to be huge.
These are
National
huge.
Yeah.
emergency.
So, but again, and I've actually made a couple posts
Look at
about
yourself.
this because people are saying, "Oh, this would have never happened in another country or whatever," and it's not true.
Right.
I don't know how much of a universal healthcare system Italy has specifically was one that I was looking at, but they, from what I gathered, and again, somebody can fact check me on this, but they have a fairly highly ranked universal healthcare system. Didn't matter. And I'm not saying that it didn't matter because it was universal healthcare. It's like this is an issue about infrastructure, about, regardless of what your healthcare system is, what do you have in place and what strategies do you have? What resources do you have in the wings to make something happen if a pandemic like this of any degree were to occur? Because, thank goodness we actually have testing. I know that initially the tests weren't 100% accurate, and we had to continue developing and refining the tests even where it was. And you could argue, of course, that the U.S. has had somewhat of an advantage in that it didn't start here with us. I mean, if it did, what would that have looked like? And I don't know, and there's just criticism and fingers getting pointed at different countries and strategies. And again, people come in and they're like, how can I, make an analogous argument for my political preferences?
Yeah.
And I just think it's bigger than that. I think it's way bigger because not only is it something that we have to do domestically, but I'm assuming we're going to need to be able to communicate and have some sort of set of, SOPs, for these other countries. And I feel like we're just so distracted with ourselves.
Right.
And I just wish that we would, think a little bit bigger than, what this means for the election, how it's because we all know what's going to happen. Trump's going to stand there, and either Biden or Bernie is going to be standing up there, and somebody's going to say the way you mishandled that is just a clear indicator. And they might be right there, but again, then he'll say, "Oh, well, there was so much red tape that had nothing to do with me." In 2003, SARS came out, and there were people saying that we should make changes. In 2009, H1N1, and he could say, Obama was president then, and we didn't make any significant changes. I mean, you can just swing it around however you
constantly
want.
Point fingers. You can make any numbers look however you want it to look.
And,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can demonize your opponent all you want, and we're imperfect, all of us, and I think we just. I don't know.
I'm just glad I'm not in charge of anything. Like literally anything. I'm not in charge of anything. It's just there's no way someone's gonna be like,
well, Spencer.
I don't know why I'm doing a Trump impression. He's never talking to me.
The biggest idiot in the world. Okay?
It'll happen.
He lives in Utah. I don't like Utah.
Because of this podcast, it will happen. Guaranteed.
So yeah, I just hope that I hope that honestly we as citizens could put pressure on whoever to be like, can we make sure that the next time this happens, we do a whole lot better? Because if this was some strain of some
really deadly disease,
actively mutating, super fatal virus, we don't know.
Yeah.
And we weren't ready for this one.
Better
hopefully we're doing
it's not in our nature as humans, especially as Americans, to prepare for some potential, to ideate or to think and anticipate what could potentially happen in the future and be ready for that. It's just not in our nature to prepare in advance for.
We're not even willing to use a bidet.
How it's hard.
We're not even willing to use a bidet.
But I mean, again, my point is, we weren't the only country unprepared. I mean,
that would be nice if we could, but it's not.
The other thing is, how do you
pass a law in Congress through the Senate? It's hard to prepare with tax money and government intervention. You can prepare,
right?
Perhaps.
Well, and this is just my personal opinion, but I mean, our interaction with our global community. I just think there are a couple of fundamental things that you need to feel comfortable in your country, whatever it is. There are things outside of your control as a citizen, a low-level citizen such as myself, that I want to have, again, now, and I'm going to wax into some political issues, but again, I'm just sharing an opinion here. I want to have something protecting me from foreign and domestic threats
and bears.
So whether that means, threats that come in the form of a country with military, or if it's a bio threat of some kind, or, gang violence, gun violence, I want to know that I have a means of addressing that feels effective.
Splinters.
And
I want to be protected.
Because, I mean, if you look at it fundamentally, we can argue and infight all we want about politics, but if some country comes in and takes us over, they're in charge now.
Yeah.
And all of our arguing was for nothing.
Right.
There are things like that I just think, are we really seeing above ourselves to work on being able to be more collaborative and cooperative? I just feel like a lot of our answers lie in the middle of most political spectrums.
Right. Which I think is a good synopsis of this whole coronavirus thing for me, in terms of we can swing the pendulum and say like everyone's going to, there's going to be a huge thinning of the American population. And you can swing it the other way and say, this really is not a big deal. This is just influenza. And we've always dealt with influenza. So there's these two arguments. It's somewhere here. You know what I mean? Like most likely.
It's not a thing.
Yeah.
I think it's like this.
Yeah.
It's
So
a different kind of graph.
Yeah, definitely a different kind of graph. But I think the point is like, man, if we can somehow lighten our opinionatedness, which is a big word.
It's hard to.
It's a big
choose
word.
side. These are huge.
These are big words.
Opinionatedness
Big
is
word.
6 syllables longer than I've ever spoken.
I will say though, to transfer into another topic, I'm grateful for things like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The way they've responded to this whole thing has been like a really interesting.
Could you give a synopsis on how they've done that?
So generally, like a year ago, and correct me if I'm wrong on the exact dates, but a year ago they started doing this push toward home-based church type thing where we can do better, and they limited the amount of time we actually spend in our church building, so it's 2 hours every Sunday versus the 3 hours before. So anyway, we're doing more home-based approaches for church for the past year. They're really encouraging us to do better at teaching, good gospel principles in our houses. And then not only that, but things like the Bishop's Storehouse, which for those of you who don't know is like it's a storehouse of food in case of emergencies for people who are poor and unable to get that food for themselves, through regular earnings and for stuff like this. You look at that infrastructure that the church has built and you're like, that's cool. You know what I mean? That's like the preparation, the thought. I mean, I don't know if anyone's gone to like the farm here in, it's in American Fork or Lehigh, and our neighborhood or ward, goes and visits that once or twice every year, and we go weed the garden and, help harvest plants when they're ready and like all of that stuff. So it's like there's cool infrastructure, farming and preparation for stuff like this. So to be a part of whether that's somebody else's church that's doing something similar, which I hope is happening in other churches around the world, and I'm sure that it is, but it makes me grateful for organizations that do plan and prepare for emergency like things that are unforeseen, like pandemics. Coronavirus,
and it is a big deal because that addressing that change internally, I know people may or may not care about these details, but like the church has been a 3 hours in the church building church every Sunday for
so long,
like probably the whole 20th century, I think.
Right. I'm trying to think
I
when
don't-
they changed it.
And they changed it to where at one point it used to be like sacrament
Three
meeting
separate
on
meetings.
in the morning on Sunday, and then like Sunday school in the evening or something. I don't know what the specifics were, and then they have another hour-long meeting. But the bottom line was every week you were spending 3 hours in church, and then this shift was significant. But then also going into that, that I think is also interesting, specifically for Utah addressing the COVID-19 issue. As soon as it started to get bad, and we were kind of understanding that it was definitely going to get to the U.S., it was interesting to be like, oh man, Utah would get hit extra hard because half of our population every Sunday meets in a group of 300 to 400 people. And you've got two more groups of 300 or 400 people who are coming into that building. So you cough on a pew,
And the most
grab
active are
a
all
chair
over
after
60.
you've sneezed, like, a lot of the church
I'm not
leadership
gonna
is in
lie,
that
the
high
church
risk
is-
group too.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's just interesting that they were actually, one of the first people to, like a month ago or a month and a half ago, they're like, none of our international membership should come to Utah. Don't.
Really?
So like they kind of had their own travel, not restriction, but recommendation. And then ultimately, fairly recently, they just said, okay, general conference, this semi-annual gathering for like the whole church membership, nobody's coming in. It's going to be speakers and choir members.
Unprecedented conference of
Right.
Yeah.
the last
like
century is
the 200-year
totally different.
anniversary of.
yeah.
But I mean, and
you know,
also kudos
start of
to
the church.
the sports leagues who are willing to cut into it. Man, March Madness when we lost that.
Oh,
That
that
is-
was
man,
that was
that hurt
devastating.
so
That
bad.
hurt.
That really is
I was
tough for
so
those guys,
excited.
too.
That one kills
They
you,
only
man.
get that one chance.
And
a lot of
baseball's
them.
about to start too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we are sportless, man, and
Wait,
it
baseball?
sucks. everything's down.
Yeah, I
man.
mean, spring
No,
spring season's about
Yeah, spring training's wrapping up, and we don't know when the season will start, and like players don't know what to do. I mean, they got plenty of money, so they'll fill their time.
guaranteed.
I'm scared.
All right.
Even little Indio Picaro died. Well,
Brothers,
Do we have any more juice, or do we feel like we've kind of run the course on this one?
I feel
or-
like we did a healthy job on that.
Sick.
Yeah.
Oh, you felt it was healthy?
I feel healthy.
Oh, okay.
I feel very healthy, and I feel like we did a good job. I don't want to brag or anything. I feel like it was
I don't
fantastic.
want brag or anything, Big Blue.
Let me be honest, it's the best thing I've ever done.
So cool. I mean, I think that these things are super interesting, and
Take care of your neighbors. Take care of the people
Yeah.
around you. Let's be far more global, and let's let our outreach. Let's not reach inward during times of pandemic and scared.
Right.
But like if you have things to share, share them.
And one more thing that I'll just address too is I've seen some recent criticism of labeling it a state of emergency. I don't know if you guys have seen that type of messaging, any sort of criticism, where the reasoning for the criticism is they're saying like we shouldn't call it a state of emergency. That's why people are doing what they're doing at these grocery stores.
Yeah.
But that's a really
what's the DEFCON 7?
that whole thing.
It's
Yeah.
like
That exact thing that like
Right.
maybe we should try to refine our language when we make these statements.
Yeah.
And for me, I get a little concerned about that. Again, that's just my personal opinion, just because it's like it comes from a place of not trusting people to be smart
Responsible,
and
yeah.
responsible citizens. So it's like, oh, let me spoon feed everything. Because even if you do that, then you're immediately going to reduce its impact on the group of people that are already fine with what you have.
Yep,
See,
yep,
there's
yep,
no like perfect way to message in these types of scenarios, and there's inevitably going to be panic. There's inevitably going to be naysayers. Like it's always going to happen. But I would, again, as either a challenge or invitation, or if anybody's listening to this at all and has made it this far in the recording,
us 4 will.
just to like, we should be responsible consumers and producers of information
100%.
because a lot's at stake here. I mean, not only is it your hygiene habits that impact the community around you directly from a health perspective, but what you say, is in the same way we talk about viral videos. It's very, analogous, this whole experience that when you're spreading bacteria or ideas, we need to be able to have a good social immune system and discern, between, what somebody may be getting carried away with something, but
His way with words.
it's something that I think is important. I think, and I try to do that, and I think that I got nervous sometimes with some of the posts that I make, because I'm like, what if somebody comes in and they've got some slam dunk contrarian evidence to just be like, what are you talking about, man? Like, you have wasted my eye energy reading your words.
And now I'm responding.
Yeah,
giving
and
you
now
more.
I'm gonna school you. I'm gonna teach you. I just feel that I would like us to look deeper and not default to what we think right away, and just think critically about this stuff.
So,
Yes.
So I know there's going to be like 17 people watching this, but in the scenario that there is someone in a leadership role at a company that has the ability to make decisions, there was a case study I remember that we read through during my MBA, and it was of a company who had to make hard decisions in the recession of 2007, 8, and 9, like every company did, and rather than firing, 30% of their workforce, essentially what they did is they said, hey, everybody, you're going to take 6 weeks. Your vacation time that was 3 weeks is now 6 weeks, and it's mandatory and it's unpaid. And that way we don't have to fire anybody. So no one's taking the absolute worst possible scenario of losing their livelihood, but everybody's feeling it a little bit. And I think that's what a healthy society looks like and a healthy business looks like when you are wading through the difficulty together. So I really admired that. Again, I can't remember. I'm sure a quick Google search would tell you what company that was, but that was impressive to me.
Google stock down big, by the way.
Really? Alphabet?
I mean, all of them are, right? Everyone's taking it on the teeth, whether they...
Who's betting against Procter & Gamble, the largest manufacturer of toilet paper? Are you kidding me?
No,
I'm buying.
my cousin's into trading, and he told me that I think it was Carnival Cruise Line.
Yeah, CCL.
Their
down to
their
20
stock went down 75%.
I bought
like, that's
some Carnival Cruise. This is bizarre. I mean, they have an 11% dividend, right? But their their Carnival Cruise. I
Not
know.
anymore.
This is not a sales pitch, by the way. I could get in trouble for
That
that.
whole investor disclaimer thing.
Yeah, but my point is,
This is
like,
not investment advice.
their stock is down to $14 a share on Friday, right? So I mean,
And
geez, it's
was
just-
it them
it's wild.
who's a part of the
Taking that
bailout? I think the cruise lines were directly.
I'm trying to. I don't know if it was Carnival. I think there was like was it Paradise Cruise Lines or something or what?
All I know is that there are political moves to keep these cruise lines afloat.
Oh.
baby.
Oh.
I need to pull this mic out of here so I can
Boom.
drop it.
Yeah,
Drop
so you
it.
can
Pun?
Drop
Got a pun?
All right, let's
Set up.
let's go out with
Set
like a
up.
beatboxing like style of like
Little,
something
like
something.
Mike
Zach
Corona?
and Zach, you
Something
bring
with
in the
Corona?
vocals. You bring in the vocals, bro.
Zach's
Dude,
the melody. Zach's, you got the chorus.
Hi. Hi.
what do I do? What do I do when I don't want to breathe on you? And I don't want you to breathe on me. Oh, this is so bad, dude. And so white.
What do I do?
What do I like?
What do I do
I like
when
try
I
to
don't want to
do
breathe on you?
some like 50s rock / modern R&B, like making it work.
I just like the what do I do when I don't want to breathe on you? What do I do? All
He
right.
doesn't want to breathe on him.
Love you all. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.